Let's talk China bike sprockets. This is my 2019 Tbr7. Right now, just over 2,000 kilometers. And this bike in particular, when it was brand new, the chain was too short and the tire was all the way forward. So we had to replace the chain. From the factory, the Tbr7 came with a 15 front sprocket and a 46 rear sprocket. So once I put the proper length chain on that would fit and you could adjust slack in without having the rear wheel all the way forward, I changed the front sprocket. Probably a couple hundred kilometers into owning the bike. And it made a noticeable difference, which was surprising to me. Mostly on acceleration. So once you put the 17-tooth sprocket on the front, you're not going to be able to do wheelies as easily. So the most noticeable difference for me is riding on the street when you come to a stop sign and you want to just be lazy and stay in second gear and try to take off again, you have to give it more RPMs with the bigger front sprocket on, and it's a noticeable difference. But it achieved the overall goal of keeping the RPMs down at a higher speed. So when you're cruising at 40 to 50, the RPMs are a little bit lower than they were with the 15-tooth front sprocket. So today, we have our rear sprocket upgrade. And we're going to open this up, and then we'll pull the rear tire off. Yep, seems like that's how it's going to work. Pretty easy. Here's our axle, not too bad yet. Just a little paint wear, really. So your brake caliper sort of sits on this pin over here. I'm just figuring this out now, and is held in position by your axle bolt. So I know there's not much light in here, so I got the flashlight out. We'll check the rust. Not too bad. This is a pretty good idea. When you take your tire off, hold your sprocket up to make sure it's going to fit on before you start unbolting your old parts, right? Because if we're going to have to return stuff, there's no point in taking it off. And you notice there's two different patterns on here, so you would think maybe it's like a multi-lug wheel. But no. The patterns are the same, it appears, but the hole size is different. I know a common thing on these Chinese bikes, a lot of people are snapping their rear sprocket studs. So my sprocket, I haven't touched it yet. Let me zoom in here to show you. I don't know if that's just a little bit of normal play, or... Let's see if we can get this snap ring off before we have to change the camera battery. These snap ring pliers, way too small probably, yeah. So you can see our little bit of wiggle there. And your snap ring goes in here, where my finger is, in that little groove. So you can move it this way, but if you try the other side, like that, it won't move, so. So I'm just using a bike for a little bit of leverage on mine. I'm starting with the two ones that were wiggly. So we have our rear sprocket off, and here's a look at the studs if you want to see those. They're just a pin on one side and threaded on the other side, and they just stick in here. So on your new JT sprocket, you're going to need the larger holes for these. And so now all we have to do is bolt it back together. And so we put our studs in, got them set, and we're going to try to put it on now. Could be doing it completely wrong, you don't have to do it this way. So of course there's going to be no wiggle because we're hammering it on. These snap ring pliers are definitely undersized, I will say that. Wow, that was almost like I knew what I was doing. Let's see if we can get the clicking, clacking seated here. Yep. Good time to wipe off your rim and spokes and hub. What do you guys think? Do you think I keep my Tbr7 in good shape? I've seen some people and they're just trashing. I get it, it's a cheap bike, but... So the first thing we got to get lined up is the brake disc and the brake caliper. We already got that on the other side. Now we're going to line up our axle bolt and our chain adjustment tensioner here. We got that through. Now put on our large spacer. So we got our axle bolt back through. Some people do it without taking the chain off. This is just the way we did it. I'm not recommending you do anything that I do. So it appears we're going to have to shorten our chain quite a bit. So good thing we have this brand new one that we never ran from Tao. So I'll count the links and put them here in text of what we have in the end to tell you what you need for this gearing combination. And the other thought was we're going to keep this one in case we go back. I didn't want to cut this one. So this one will work out. We just have to slide our tire forward a bit and then we can put our master link in. So here's a thought I'll leave buried in the middle of this video. If you buy a Tao or a Hawk and the chain is too tight from the factory, maybe instead of buying the right length chain, you might want to just upgrade the sprockets. If you're doing the same thing I am, then it would work out. So we got our new JT sprocket on and our chain adjusted. Let me just show you our measurements here so you know that we're getting it right. That's on this side. You want to look on that one, that's pretty good, right? Same thing. All tightened down, good to go. Today I'm going to finish my rear sprocket install update. We're at 95 kilometers on the rear sprocket. So I said after 100 kilometers I was going to pull the rear tire off and we would check the tension on the sprocket because the factory sprocket had a little bit of wiggle. So I'm pulling the chain guard off just to get it out of the way. If I can grab the right wrench here. That one. Pop this one out. Flip the chain guard up by our tire there and then we can have the view. So correction for my other video. I don't think I need to take the rear tire off to check the sprocket wiggle like we had before. What I'm going to do is pop the chain master link. So let's see, here's the moment of truth. Is it going to wiggle? Remember, it would wiggle one way, but not the other way. So, first try. Tight, no wiggle. Win! So that's good, no problems there. So I'll give you guys a rundown of what I think about the rear sprocket as I put the chain back on. And it made a very big difference to me on this bike. Mostly in traffic, especially now with there being no laws and people drive as fast as they want, so in 25-mile-an-hour zone, everyone's doing 50 now. Not really safe for motorcycles, but my hands are just filthy, so I don't want to touch the camera, but to get the chain back on, I put it on top of the sprocket so that way it was easy to line up and then you can just put your pin through. So now that I changed both sprockets on my Tbr7, I'm not sure what carburetor shed I'm running. It's over 100. It's a 105, 110 maybe, I don't know. But with this setup, I'm pretty happy with the Tbr7 on the street. You can cruise around 55-ish miles an hour and no problem. Anything over that and I think you're really starting to push it. Now if you cruise around at 40 miles an hour with this setup, it's basically just over an idle. So your Tbr7 will last forever as long as you do that. But if you want to wind it out to 75 and hold it there for 15 minutes, then I don't know, it's probably going to burn up. So in summary, we went from a 15 front sprocket to a 17 and from a 46 down to a 39. And that combination will give you really good top speed. First gear is more usable. You can actually drive down the driveway in first gear. You don't have to go right to second. So we have our custom chain slider on there. That was in the last video if you guys are looking for how to fix your chain slider when it gets worn out. I have extra replacements, but I'm just going to keep running that one. I explained it in that video. It's pretty neat. I think that's a pretty good fix, and it was very cheap. So in that 1,000-mile review video, I said I didn't know what jet I upgraded in the carb, and that was to a 105. So I'm actually going to go even bigger. So we don't have a 112 jet. We have a 105, a 108, a 110, 115, and then so on up to 140. So I think I'm going to go with this 110. I might have ran it before, and then I went back to the 105. So I ended up putting the 110 main jet in it, and that seems to fix the issue I was having. Putting the 110 in seems to fix the issue I was having. It just started being a little finicky because it's so hot out, maybe, I don't know. But even on a 90-degree day after riding it, you would still have to start it with the choke. Once we put the larger main jet in, fix that problem. I think we're up to 192 kilometers on our rear sprocket now, so we put another 100 on it. Pretty good.